For 3 years, I wired $750 every single Friday to two people who couldn't even be bothered to show up for my daughter's 7th birthday. And when I finally asked why, they told me she meant nothing to them. My name is Natalie Brooks. I'm 34 years old, and I'm a pediatric nurse. Every day at work, I help sick children breathe. I hold the hands of terrified parents while alarms go off around me. I stay calm when everything is falling apart. That's who I am at work. But for 156 straight weeks, I would slip away during my lunch break between checking oxygen lines and calling in medication updates, open my banking app, and send $750 to my parents. Like clockwork. Like a bill I had convinced myself I owed. I want you to understand something before I go any further. This wasn't me helping parents who were struggling through hard times. This was me funding two people who had spent most of my life teaching me that love was something you had to earn. And I had been paying the invoice for years without ever stopping to ask whether the product was real. The morning everything changed was the morning of Emma's 7th birthday. I was standing in our bedroom, staring at the transfer confirmation on my phone, when I looked up and saw the little pink party dress hanging from the closet door. And for the first time in all those years of sending that money, I didn't feel resentful. I didn't feel tired. I felt something colder. I felt embarrassed. Because somewhere in the back of my mind, I already knew. I was handing money every week to two adults who couldn't even pretend to care about the little girl in that pink dress. Emma had been talking about her grandparents all week like they were royalty coming to visit. She had set aside 2 cupcakes herself. One with blue frosting because she remembered my mother once said blue looked elegant, and one with rainbow sprinkles because she thought my father liked fun things. Even though I honestly couldn't remember the last time that man had smiled at anything that didn't benefit him directly. I kept telling myself they would show up. Even selfish people can usually perform kindness for a child, right? But a part of me remembered. Every ignored school recital. Every visit that evaporated the second a bill came due on their end. Every excuse delivered so smoothly it took me days to notice I'd been lied to again. I saw it clearly. I just kept funding it anyway. By 2:30 on the afternoon of the party, our apartment looked like a child had been handed unlimited sugar and full creative control. Streamers hanging in crooked lines across the ceiling. Paper stars taped to every wall. The dining table crowded with heart-shaped sandwiches, bowls of fruit, pink lemonade in plastic dispensers, and a 3-layer strawberry cake I had absolutely no business attempting after 2 overnight shifts in a row. But Emma had asked for something princess fancy. And when your daughter asks you for something with her whole heart, you find energy you didn't know you had. She spun through the living room in white socks and that pink dress, clutching a faded Polaroid from a year before, a picture of the two of us at our old kitchen table, a paper crown sliding over her eyebrow, and 2 empty chairs behind us that she had insisted we leave open just in case. She held that photo up and asked me, "Do you think Grandma will wear pink this time so we match?" I smiled so hard it almost hurt. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe she will." Children don't understand emotional absence the way adults do. They just believe the people who are supposed to love them will eventually act like it. And that's exactly what makes moments like that so unbearable to witness. Her friends arrived first, loud and joyful, and trailing wrapping paper. Then neighbors, then 2 mothers from her dance class, then Vanessa, carrying a giant gift bag and enough warmth to fill every cold corner of the apartment. Every time the buzzer sounded, Emma's face lifted with that same instant. Electric hope. And every time it wasn't my parents, she recovered too quickly. She never pouted. She never asked where they were in front of the guests. She just kept checking the door, with a smile that was working very hard to stay brave. At one point, I found her kneeling at the coffee table with crayons spread everywhere, drawing with the kind of focused seriousness that only children can summon. She had drawn herself, me, balloons, a cake, and then 2 taller stick figures with silver hair. "That's for Nana and Grandpa," she said without looking up. "So, when they get here, they know where to stand." I have walked into trauma bays without flinching. I have spoken calmly to parents while the worst moments of their lives unfolded in front of them. But that one sentence from my 7-year-old nearly brought me to my knees. Still, I kept moving. I poured juice. I cut cake. I tied ribbons around favor bags. Outwardly, I looked like a mother throwing a beautiful birthday party. Inside, I was counting every passing minute like it was evidence in a case I had been building against myself for years. When Emma stood in front of the cake, eyes squeezed shut to make her birthday wish, she opened her eyes and looked toward the front door before she ever looked at the candles. That detail. That one small detail stayed with me more than anything else that day. She laughed through musical chairs. She immediately wanted to wear the ridiculous glitter jacket Vanessa brought over her party dress. She hugged every friend goodbye like the day had been perfect. But after the last guest left and the apartment went quiet except for the slow squeak of deflating balloons, she came to me holding one untouched blue frosted cupcake and asked, "Did they forget me? Or are they still coming after dinner?" That was the moment the truth stopped being something I could soften for myself. It was no longer about distant parents or old resentment. It was about what kind of mother I was going to be next. The kind who kept explaining away cruelty, or the kind who finally called it by its name. After I got Emma bathed, tucked in, and half convinced that adults sometimes miss important things, but that none of it had anything to do with how lovable she was, I sat alone at the kitchen counter and stared at my phone. The apartment looked like a celebration that had collapsed mid-breath. Torn wrapping paper still under the table. Pink icing dried on one of the plates. That single blue frosted cupcake sitting near the sink, the frosting slowly caving inward. The one Emma had saved for my mother. I kept looking at it like it might explain something. At 9:42 that night, I called. My father answered on the fourth ring with the irritated tone of a man who felt interrupted, not ashamed. I didn't start with anger. No accusations. No tears. I asked one question quietly. "Why didn't you come to Emma's birthday?" There was a pause. Television noise in the background. My mother's voice somewhere near him asking, "Who is it?" He answered her first. "Natalie." Then he came back on with a short laugh that instantly transported me back to every dismissive moment of my entire childhood. "We weren't needed there," he said. I gripped the counter so hard my fingers hurt. "She waited for you all day." Then my mother took the phone. And I swear, the worst part wasn't what she said. It was how calm she sounded. No guilt. No discomfort. Just that composed, clipped voice she always used when she wanted to reduce something painful into something practical. "Natalie, stop making this bigger than it is. We are not arranging our lives around a child's party. Emma means nothing to us in any real sense. You chose to have her. That is your responsibility, not ours." My body reacted before my mind did. Every muscle locked. My breath went shallow. I could hear my own pulse. I asked her the most humiliating question I have ever asked another human being, let alone my own mother. "After everything I do for you, that's really how you see her?" My father came back on, harsher now. "Don't start with the money. Sending money doesn't buy loyalty. You help because you're supposed to help. We raised you. You still owe us. And don't expect us to play doting grandparents just because your kid wants attention. Your kid, not Emma. Not your daughter. Not our granddaughter. Your kid." Like she was a random burden I had dragged into their line of sight. And with that, 100 memories started lining up in my head so fast they felt almost choreographed. The time Emma had a fever of 103, and I called my mother from urgent care because I needed someone to sit with us for 1 hour. She said, "I'm not spending my afternoon around sick children." The Christmas they arrived 3 hours late, left early, and still reminded me before walking out the door that their heating bill was unbearable this month. The recital they promised to attend, then skipped because my father didn't want to deal with parking. The birthday card they signed for Emma last year, no gift, no message, with a cash request for themselves tucked into the same envelope 3 days later. Suddenly, everything made sense in the ugliest possible way. I had not been supporting parents who were struggling and emotionally distant. I had been financing two people who felt entitled to me and completely indifferent to my child. That distinction changed everything. While my father was still talking, still explaining my duty to me like I was an employee refusing overtime, I opened my banking app. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost mistyped my password twice. The weekly transfer was sitting there. Neat. Routine. Disgustingly normal. $750 every Friday, like clockwork. I canceled it. Then I canceled the backup automatic transfer I had set up months earlier in case my shifts got too hectic. And then, because something deeper than anger had finally taken over, I moved the next 3 months of what would have gone to them into a brand new savings account. I labeled it Emma College Fund before I could second-guess myself. My mother was still speaking somewhere in the background, accusing me of dramatics, saying I was twisting words. But her voice had started sounding very far away. My whole body was vibrating, not from indecision, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. 40 minutes after my parents told me my child meant nothing to them, the money stopped.
Not paused.
Not reduced.
Stopped.
And for the first time in years, I understood something I wish someone had told me a decade earlier. Cutting someone off is not always an act of anger. Sometimes it is the first honest sentence you have spoken in a very long time. By the way, if you're still with me through this story, go ahead and hit subscribe. I share more real, unfiltered stories like this one, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. I woke up the next morning feeling like I had slept inside a storm. Chest tight, eyes burning, and for one disorienting second, I forgot what had happened. Then I saw the pink birthday banner still drooping across the living room, and I remembered all of it at once. Emma padded into the kitchen in dinosaur pajamas, hair wild, voice soft with sleep, and asked if she could have waffles for breakfast because birthdays should last at least 2 days. I said yes, without a second's hesitation. Because if there was one thing I now understood with crystal clarity, it was this: childhood should not have to carry adult damage any earlier than it absolutely has to. I made the waffles, packed her lunch, braided her hair, watched her walk into school with that pink backpack and that same trusting little wave she always gave me before disappearing through the doors. Then I sat in the car for a long time, hands on the steering wheel, and let myself actually feel what I had done. The grief surprised me less than the relief. I had expected guilt first, maybe panic. Instead, I felt like someone had cut a wire that had been buzzing under my skin for years. At 10:17, my phone lit up. My mother. One text. Send the money today. Payment is due, and your father's card already bounced. No mention of Emma. No shame. No, we shouldn't have said that. Just logistics. Just demand. A second text came less than a minute later.
We are not discussing last night.
We said what we said in frustration. Don't behave irrationally over emotions. I laughed out loud in that car. A sharp, ugly laugh that startled even me. Over emotions. As if a child waiting all day for grandparents who later declared she meant nothing was some hormonal overreaction I was blowing out of proportion. As if their dependence on my money was practical and my daughter's pain was theatrical. I typed 3 different replies and erased every single one. Then I sent the only version that felt clean enough to stand behind. You made your position clear. I'm making mine clear, too. There will be no more money. Do not contact Emma. I wish you the life you chose. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Disappeared. Reappeared. Before she finished typing, my father called. I let it ring. Then my mother called. Then my father again. Then a number from their local bank branch. I stared at my screen and felt something inside me harden in the healthiest possible way. By noon, my father had left a voicemail. His voice sounded different now. Still angry, but threaded with something new.
Panic.
Natalie, you do not get to do this without warning. We counted on that money. You can't destabilize people like this because of one emotional overreaction. Call me back before you make this worse.
Worse.
That word sat with me all day. Worse than teaching my daughter that people can insult her, ignore her, take from her mother, and still deserve unlimited access because they share DNA. Worse than watching a 7-year-old glance at the front door while blowing out her birthday candles. My mother changed tactics that afternoon, a long message full of sacrifice and carefully polished distortion. She wrote about everything they had done for me growing up, about how children shouldn't punish aging parents for one bad conversation, about duty and obligation, and how my feelings being hurt didn't erase what I owed them. She even added, "You know how much pressure your father is under right now," as if stress were a permit for cruelty.
I didn't respond.
Instead, I opened my budgeting app and looked at what my life was actually going to look like without that weekly transfer leaving my account.
And it was almost offensive how obvious it became.
More savings, more breathing room, more margin for Emma, a real emergency fund, better after-school programs, maybe dance camp this summer without calculating which bill to delay, maybe braces next year without dread, maybe simply living without that weekly ritual of wiring money to people who treated me like a utility. The longer I stared at those numbers, the angrier I got. Not because I had cut them off, because I had waited this long. At 4:06, another voicemail. My father again, done pretending this was about morality. If you don't send something by tonight, we're going to have problems here. There it was. The truth, stripped bare. They weren't grieving the relationship. They were grieving the interrupted revenue. And once I saw that clearly, I understood something I wish I had learned 10 years earlier. Some people never confuse love with money because to them, love has always just been the most effective way to ask for money. That afternoon, I picked Emma up from school, took her for ice cream for no reason except that I could, and listened to her spend 20 full minutes explaining why mint chocolate chip was a grown-up brave flavor. She laughed. She talked. And then she asked if we could do a little birthday redo on the weekend, just with fun people this time. Sitting across from her in that plastic booth, I knew with everything in me that I had already chosen correctly. Not because it was easy, not because it didn't hurt, but because for once in my life, I had stopped confusing endurance with love. 3 days of relentless calls, voicemails, and guilt-drenched messages from extended relatives eventually pushed me to do something I hadn't planned. I went to their townhouse. Not for closure. Closure is a luxury phrase people use when they've never had to fight for basic emotional truth. I went because I wanted them to hear my decision in person, without a screen to hide behind, without any way to rewrite my tone or crop my words. Their place looked exactly like it always had. Trimmed hedges they couldn't really afford. A brass welcome sign polished to death. The kind of front porch that screamed stability from a distance while everything underneath it was quietly rotting. My mother opened the door before my second knock. Her face hardened the moment she saw I had come alone. "So, you finally decided to act like an adult," she said. I stepped inside and immediately noticed overdue notices stacked under a decorative bowl in the entryway. That told me more than anything she could have said. My father came in from the kitchen, already angry, already rehearsed. "You've embarrassed us," he said. "Your aunt called, asking why your mother was crying. Do you know what that does to people at our age?" I almost admired the technique. Our age, as if age itself entitled them to my income. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That our daughter cut us off because we missed one party," my mother snapped. "No," I said. "The truth is you told me my daughter means nothing to you. The truth is you've taken money from me every week while treating Emma like an inconvenience. The truth is you expected me to keep paying after saying the quiet part out loud." My father stepped closer. "You are blowing one sentence completely out of proportion." "Which sentence?" I asked. "The part where she means nothing, or the part where you said, 'I still owe you'?" That landed. For a moment, nobody moved. Then my mother did what she always did when cornered by facts. She escalated volume. "You are selfish. You have always been selfish. Ever since you had that child, everything became about your feelings, your schedule, your life. We needed help. You had the ability to provide it. That's what family does." "No," I said, quieter than her, which made her angrier. "That's what exploitation does. Family doesn't tell a 7-year-old she's unwanted without ever saying it to her face. Family doesn't collect $750 every week and still refuse to show up for birthday cake." My father's expression shifted from outrage to something uglier the moment a man realizes the money has actually, truly stopped. "Do you understand what this could do to us? We have obligations, fees. We are behind because we expected." He caught himself. Expected. There was the whole architecture of our relationship in a single word. Not hoped. Not appreciated. Expected. "You expected me to keep financing your life," I said.
"And I
expected you to love my daughter enough to show up for 2 hours. Looks like we were both wrong. My mother's eyes narrowed to something sharp. If you walk out over this, don't come back crying when Emma asks why she has no grandparents. That should have shattered me. Instead, it clarified everything. When Emma asks, I said, I'll tell her the truth in a way a child can carry. I won't teach her that love is something you have to purchase from people who resent giving it. I turned to leave. My father followed me to the porch and hissed, loud enough for the neighbor watering her plants next door to hear. Cutting us off financially at our age is the same as killing us slowly. I faced him one last time. No, I said. I'm just refusing to die with you. Then I got in my car and drove away while he stood there speechless, because for once, I had not left him any room to turn me into the villain inside my own story. By that evening, the family campaign had launched. My mother posted a vague paragraph about children who forget the hands that fed them. My father shared a quote about loyalty. 2 cousins sent careful, guilt-soaked messages asking whether I had maybe overreacted in the heat of the moment. An uncle I hadn't seen in nearly a year wrote, "They're old, Nat. Sometimes older people say harsh things. That doesn't mean you let them sink." The speed with which people will defend abusers the moment money is involved would almost be funny if it weren't so exhausting. But I remembered something I had written to myself after Emma's birthday. Do not perform your pain for spectators. So I didn't reply publicly. Instead, I chose precision. I sent private messages to 4 relatives who actually knew me, not the theatrical version of me my parents preferred. No speeches. No dramatic screenshots. Just dates, amounts, and facts. I paid $750 a week for 3 years. My parents skipped Emma's birthday. When I asked why, they said she meant nothing to them. The payments were over. The subject was closed. The truth, clean and stable, has a way of doing damage all by itself. Within 24 hours, the tone shifted. My parents' vague posts stopped getting sympathy and started getting silence. One cousin quietly unfriended both of them. My Aunt Colleen, my mother's own older sister, texted me 2 words. They said that? About Emma? And then I later found out she called my mother, and that conversation ended with my mother hanging up first, which in our family was basically a public confession. 2 days later, my father left a voicemail that sounded nothing like his earlier outrage. Flatter.
Hello,
Natalie. This has gotten out of hand.
people are misunderstanding things.
Maybe we should all sit down and reset expectations. Not apologize. Not make it right. Reset expectations. I deleted it without replying. That weekend, Emma and I went to a children's museum, then out for pancakes, then bought sidewalk chalk we absolutely did not need. On the drive home, she asked casually, "Are Nana and Grandpa still busy?" I tightened my grip on the steering wheel and told her, "Yes. And sometimes when people stay too busy for too long, we stop waiting at the door for them." She considered that for a moment with the quiet seriousness only a 7-year-old can manage. Then she nodded like she understood more than she should. "Okay," she said. "Can Vanessa come to my next birthday instead?" I smiled despite everything. Absolutely. Children know who shows up. Their loyalty isn't bought by titles. It's built by presence. Mine had taken 34 years to learn that. Hers took one missed party and a little bit of honesty. 3 weeks later, Emma asked if we could have a birthday redo, not for more presents, but because she wanted a day that felt all the way happy. So we did. We kept it small on purpose. Just Emma, me, Vanessa, 2 neighborhood friends, a bubble machine from the discount store, cupcakes from the bakery down the street, and a speaker that kept cutting out every third song. Imperfect.
Noisy. Bright.
Real. Before the guests arrived, I opened the kitchen drawer where I had shoved old transfer confirmations, printed receipts, and the legal pad where I had once tracked what my parents owed and what I still felt guilty for not giving. I took the whole stack out to the patio with a metal mixing bowl and a lighter. I didn't make a speech. I didn't cry. I just watched the paper curl into black edges and then into nothing. Emma appeared at the screen door. "What are you doing?" "Throwing away old mistakes," I said. She accepted that immediately because children don't always need details. They need emotional weather reports. Safe or unsafe. Cloudy or clear. Later that day, I found her at the picnic table drawing again. This time, there were no tall silver-haired figures waiting to be added to the page. Just her, me, Vanessa with giant earrings, and a small cluster of friends holding balloons. At the top, in uneven capital letters, she had written 2 words: my people. I sat down beside her and looked at that page for a long time. That was the moment I knew we were going to be fine. Not because it had stopped hurting. Not because my parents had changed, they hadn't. In fact, that same evening, as the last guests were leaving, my phone lit up with a video call request from them. Something made me answer. They appeared on screen side by side. No polish left. No rehearsed dignity. Just strain. My mother looked older than she had a month before. My father looked furious that need had finally forced him into visibility. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Then my mother tried. Natalie, this has gone too far. I said nothing. My father leaned forward. We may lose the townhouse. Still, I said nothing. My mother's voice cracked slightly. We just need help until we get back on our feet. Help. Not forgiveness. Not remorse. Help. Their eyes searched my face for the old reflex, the one that used to rush in to save them, so I could feel useful instead of loved. It didn't come. From the next room, I heard Emma laughing while Vanessa taught her how to stack paper plates on her head like hats. That sound cut through the entire performance like light through dirty glass. I finally spoke one sentence. You told me exactly what my child was worth to you, and I believed you. Then I ended the call. 1 minute later, a payment alert from my own bank appeared on screen, confirming the monthly auto transfer into Emma's college fund. I stared at that notification, and I felt something very close to peace. Not revenge in the dramatic sense. Not destruction. Just redirection. Money that once went to people who saw my daughter as a burden was now building her future, one deposit at a time. That was the real ending. Not whether they suffered. They did. Not whether relatives judged me. Some still do. The real ending was this. Emma stopped asking about the door. She stopped setting aside cupcakes for people who treated love like leverage. She started drawing the family that actually existed instead of the one I kept financing in my imagination. I used to believe family meant blood, obligation, and endurance. Now I know better. Family is whoever shows up when there is nothing to gain. Family is whoever looks at a child and sees a human being instead of an inconvenience. And if there is one thing I would leave with anyone living inside a one-sided relationship, it's this: never use sacrifice as proof that a bond is healthy. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your child is to end the tradition that taught you to beg for basic care. Saying no did not make me cruel. It made me responsible. It made me a mother. And if one day your child asks why someone with your last name never truly loved them, maybe the bravest answer isn't a lie wrapped in respectability. Maybe the bravest answer is simply this: because some people only know how to love what they can control. Now I want to hear from you. If you had been sitting at that kitchen counter that night, transfer screen open, daughter asleep in the next room, phone still warm from that call, what would you have done? Would you have sent the money one more time? Or would you have made the same call I did? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to know where you stand.